Hey guys, we're going to quickly read through chapter 7. It's one of the most important chapters, but it's also a chapter that's pretty easy to understand without a summary. And the reason for that is because we're looking at moving from the general to the particular. So we're going to explore particular cases of the golden mean and see what the golden mean is, or this intermediate point that's referred to quite often when Aristotle writes. So we only have one success criteria, which is we're going to draw on our previous general knowledge, which is where he talks abstractly about this is how the theory works. Every intermediate point has two vices, one of excess and defect. And we're going to then explore particular examples of where this is the case. That's what this chapter is going to do. So score yourself in the success criteria and then draw me a picture of something that represents what we call the action/passion of fear and confidence. Well, where does cowardice fit on that continua? Where does bravery fit? And where does rashness fit? I think before I get started, I might just explain one thing to you. There's a reason for why actions and passions end up being referred to quite a fair bit, because we could say that the actions and passions are the way that we behave, or they create the continuum through which we behave, and then we actually have the behaviors on them. Bravery is a behavior, cowardice is behavior, and rashness is behavior. Well, they're all adjectives that can be used to describe behavior. If you look at the table on page 231, you'll see exactly what I mean. Take some time. Okay, here we go. The above proposition illustrated by reference to particular virtues, which just basically means I'm going to provide you with examples. Number 7. We must, however, not only make this general statement, which was all the philosophy above, but also apply it to the individual facts. For among statements about conduct, those which are general apply more widely, but those which are particular are more true, since conduct has to do with individual cases, and our statements must harmonize with the facts in these cases. So he's saying we need to be able to now test the theory on specific examples and make sure that we harmonize them with those examples, which he's referring to as cases. We may take these cases from our table. In the text, there is a particular table which you can download from the web, and I'll get up there. This table outlines all the spheres of action/passion, and then it shows you the defects, the vices of defect, the vices of means, and the vices of excess that correspond to each of those spheres of action or passions. All right. Now, when we talk about spheres of action or passions, we're talking about basically the continua, the scale. And if we're talking about fear and confidence, well, we know that at one end of the fear and confidence scale, we're going to have cowardice, and at the other, we're going to have rashness. In the middle, we're going to have bravery. But basically, the scale is the it's the line, it's the number line that we've been talking about previously. So, with regards to feelings of fear and confidence, courage is the mean. Of people who exceed, he who exceeds is fearless and has no name. Many of the states have no name. While the man who exceeds in confidence is rash. So you can't really exceed in fearlessness, but you can exceed in confidence and be overly confident. That's why this scale is called fear and confidence. And he who exceeds in fear falls short in confidence and is a coward. So there you go. What's the mean? Well, the mean is what we're going to call courage or bravery. What's the vice of defect? Cowardice. What's the vice of excess? It is rashness. What are we talking about? We're talking about a continua of fear and confidence. Makes sense. With regard to pleasures and pains, not all of them, and not so much with regard to the pains. The mean is temperance, which is behaving just in the middle. The self-excess of temperance, the excess self-indulgence. So if we're doing too much of seeking pleasure and pain, obviously we're talking about pleasure, we're looking for too much. Too much pleasure would be called self-indulgence. Persons deficient with regards to the pleasure are not often found. Hence, such persons also have received no name. But let us call them insensible. So you're insensible if you don't seek out enough pleasure and you go for too much pain. With regard to giving and taking of money, the mean is called liberality. In other words, we're being liberal. That's the middle. The excess and the defect are um, the excess and the defect prod, prodigality and meanness. There you go. Prodigality means we overspend, and meanness means we're just being cruel with our money and not giving it away. In these actions, people exceed and fall short in contrary ways. The prodigal exceeds in spending and falls short in taking, ex, while the mean man, that's really confusing, is that the mean is liberality, but in this case, the mean man, which is the vice of defect, exceeds in taking and falls short in spending. So obviously you can see how the two behaviors are balancing out. At present, we are giving mere outline or summary and are satisfied with this. Later, these states will be more exactly determined. Now, I'm going to say that this is a chapter that you should read again and again and again and again and again. The reason for that is I've seen quite a few questions on exams and on assignments which ask you specifically about one of these spheres of action or spheres of passion, and ask you then to contemplate how the vice of effect and the vice of excess works and also how the golden mean works. And in this case, he's saying it's pretty different from what was talked about up here in this paragraph. If you are in the vice of this sphere of action slash passion, you obviously take too much and give very little. But if you are in the vice of excess, well, you obviously spend too much and you basically don't take enough or save enough. All right? That's probably different from the way that excesses and defects work in other areas, okay? Take a note. With regard to money, there are also other dispositions, a mean, which is called magnificence, for the magnificent man differs from the liberal man. The former deals with large sums, and the latter deals with small ones. So he's saying that when you're talking about money, you're dealing with small amounts of money. An excess, which is called tastelessness and vulgarity, and a deficiency, which is called niggardliness. These differ from the states opposed to liberality, and the mode of their difference will be stated later. So he's going to explore why these are different from liberality later. With regard to honor and dishonor, the mean is proper pride. The excess is known as empty vanity. So if you've got too much honor, or you chew up yourself, then you're vain. And the deficiency is called undue humility. So you're just being obviously overdone with your humbleness. It's kind of fake and inauthentic. And as we said, liberality was related to magnificence, differing from it by dealing with small sums. Oh, okay. Liberality means small sums. So there is a state similar to it to proper pride, being concerned with small honors, while that is concerned with the great. Okay. For it is possible to desire honor as one ought, and more than one ought, and less. And the man who exceeds in his desires is called ambitious, and the one who falls short is unambitious, while the intermediate point has no name. The dispositions are also nameless, except that of the ambitious man is called ambition. Hence, the people who are the extremes lay claim to the middle place. And we ourselves sometimes call the intermediate person ambitious and sometimes unambitious, and sometimes praise the ambitious man and sometimes the unambitious man. So obviously we're talking about two different types of pride. You said there was two different types of ways of dealing with money. There's liberality, and then there's magnificence, all right? But then we're talking about the proper pride, and then we're talking about here more honors. So we're dealing with honor and dishonor still, and it doesn't really come through as to why he's differentiating between ambition and unambition. I think he's saying ambition and unambition shouldn't be given a continuum. Let's pause that and rethink about it. All right, so I just reread this, and it really does read as if he's saying that there are other aspects to proper pride to consider. So we can think of honor and dishonor. Oh, yes, of course. All right, here it's making sense completely. All right. So here we're basically saying when we're looking at honor and dishonor, the mean is proper pride. Okay. Then he goes on to say that proper pride can be concerned with small honors while it is also concerned with the great. And there's a different way that we can concern ourselves with the great. In fact, someone who wants to achieve honor can be ambitious or unambitious, but there's a different methodology for considering what ambition and unambition is. Both are related to how we perceive and how we think about proper pride, which is the mean behavior between honor and dishonor. Okay, this is all he's really saying. So take some notes. Okay, so let's go on. Now he says, okay, I've kind of explored this weird thing about proper pride. We can overdo proper pride, we can underdo proper pride, and sometimes we call the person who overdoes it ambitious. Sometimes ambitious is just a good thing. Sometimes the people who underdo this proper pride can be considered unambitious, but sometimes that's the thing, and we can't really create a golden mean between unambitious and ambitious because it's too based on like the way that a person would actually perceive it. There's no objective midpoint that can be reached. All right, let's go to anger. With regard to anger, there is an excess, a deficiency, and a mean. Although they can scarcely be said to have names, yet since we call the intermediate person good-tempered, let us call the mean good temper. If the person at the extremes If of the person at the extremes, let the one who exceed it be called irascible. Irascible means you're overly angry, and his vice is irascibility. And the man who falls short is unirascible. Is an unirascible sort of person, and the deficiency is called unirascibility. There are also three other means which have certain likeness to one another but differ from one another, for they are concerned with intercourse, which means the way that we talk, in words and actions, but differ in that one is concerned with the truth in this sphere, the other the other two are concerned with pleasantness when it comes to the way we interact and talk. Take a note. All right. So basically, and of this kind is exhibited in giving amusement. The other is about all circumstances of life. So we must therefore speak of these two. We're going to talk about amusement, and we're going to talk about pleasantness and in life in general. All right. Okay, we must therefore speak of these two that we may the better see that in all things the mean is praiseworthy and the extremes neither praiseworthy nor right, but worthy of blame. Now, of these states also have no names. Okay, thanks. Geez, no names. But we must try, as in other cases, to invent names ourselves so that we might be clear and easy to follow. With regard to truth, then, so now we are talking about truth. Our words and actions, and we're going to try and look at the intermediate point, which is truth. The intermediate is a truthful sort of person, and the mean may be called truthfulness, while the pretense which exaggerates is boastfulness, and the person characterized by it is a boaster, and that understates is mock modesty, and the person is characterized by mock modest. So he's saying if you speak the truth, you can be considered truthful. You have truthfulness. That's a virtue. But if you underdo it and you undertalk the truth, you can be the type of person who is engaging in some kind of mock modesty. You talk yourself down. All right. If you overdo it, then you tend to be a person who over exaggerates and just lies about the truth, but in a sort of exaggeration. That makes sense. Take a note. All right. With regard to pleasantness in the giving of amusement or the intermediate the intermediate person is ready-witted, and the disposition ready-wit. So if you are pleasant to talk to and interact with, you would be called a ready-witted person, and you'd have ready wit. The excess of engaging in this pleasantness of talking would be basically coming across as a buffoon. You're overdoing it. You come across stupid because you're overdoing it. And the person characterized as a buffoon. While the person who feels short is a bore, and his state is boorishness. So if you undertalk, you're not interacting, you're not engaging, you come across as a bit of a bore, and you're boorish. You should take a note. So as you can see, we're talking about means of behavior in this section that relate to how we interact with words and other people. The last thing obviously is going to be a mean of behavior in this set of three that respects or that talks about the good life in general and how we interact with other people. So with regard to the remaining kind of pleasantness, that which is exhibited for life in general, the man who is pleasant in the right way is friendly, and the mean is friendliness. And the man who exceeds is an obsequious person, for he has no end in view. He's always looking for some kind of pleasantness in life. A flatterer, he calls him. If he is aiming at his own advantage, the man who falls short, he's a flatterer if he's aiming at his own advantage. The man who falls short and is unpleasant in all circumstances is quarrelsome and surly. So the vice would be you can be someone who overdoes interaction in just all the things that allow you to live a pleasant life, and that would make you obsequious. But if you underdo it, you're just going to be grumpy. You're not even going to look for pleasance in life, and you're just going to be grumpy, quarrelsome, and argumentative. Take a note. So that's to deal with the three different types of actions that are associated with working with others. So now says there are means of passions that he wants to go into. So there are also means in the passions and concerned with the passions, since shame is not a virtue, and yet praise is extended to the modest man. So we give people praise for a passion, for how they feel. For even in these matters, one man is said to be intermediate and another to exceed. For instance, the bashful man is ashamed of everything, while he who falls short or is not ashamed of anything is shameless, and the intermediate person is called modest. So you're modest if you've got just the right amount of it. If you are too what's the actual sphere of passion we're talking about? If you have too much shame, then you will obviously be bashful. If you have not enough, then you will obviously be boastful. Is that what we call the man? I'm just going to look for this again. If you've got too much, you're bashful, or you're shameless, obviously, if you don't have enough. Righteous indignation is a means between envy and spite, and these states are concerned with the pain and pleasure that are felt at the fortunes of our neighbours. The man who is characterized by righteous indignation is pained at undeserved good fortune. The envious man, going beyond him, is pained at all good fortune, and the spiteful man falls so far short of being pained that he even rejoices. So, okay, if righteous indignation is the middle point between envy and spite means you're just angry at other people, and if you see other people suffer good fortune, an envious man would be someone who is just a little bit, he's just upset about anyone who has good fortune, whereas the what's the word I'm looking for, the man who is just in the middle, which is righteous, has righteous indignation, is upset about unjust or undeserved good fortune. And the man who falls short of being pained at all, who doesn't feel any pain with respect to what other people have, would rejoice in someone having undeserved good, and he would be a spiteful man. Okay? But these states, there will be an opportunity of describing elsewhere in regard to justness, since there's not only one simple meaning, we shall be describing other states and distinguish these two kinds and say, whatever, you guys get it. All right, so we have mainly read through and looked at everything on page 231, and my advice would be to read through this again right now. In fact, I'm requiring it. This is a work requirement. And go through and fill out what is on page 231. It is so important. You need to ask me questions about why some spheres of action/passions are labeled passions and why some are labeled actions. Talk to me about how that continuum was created and the logic for it. And also talk to me about the fact that defects and excesses tend to have different ways of functioning depending on the sphere of action or passion itself. Okay. What have we achieved today? Well, we definitely looked at particular examples and we tried to explore the logic of the particular examples. So we did actually achieve the goal.